I'm Angus, the creative director of DarkMatter.
And there's always this debate where you're towing the line between appropriation and appreciation.
I think it's like that checklist that you can work towards every day.
If you don't end up following your dreams, you'll end up working for somebody who is.
Building and cultivating this brand identity and this awareness, it can only lead to more success.
And it's always so interesting to me that people aren't jumping on the South African train.
And you're listening to the Blood, Sweat and Ideas podcast. It's a great honor to have you. And I'm sure all of our viewers, if they know you, they're going to be just as excited as we are to get to know you a little bit better and hear about your incredible story that is Kiffkak. So for those that are just tuning in and don't know Courtney or Kiffkak, her brand, it is an online e-commerce store, fashion brand, but I would say almost South African lifestyle embodied in just wrapped in this beautiful sense of South African humor that I think so many people can relate to. And that's possibly why you've had such success over the last few years.
Well, I like to think so. Also, it might be surprising to people watching because I think people that know Kiffkak don't necessarily know who's behind it. Ooh. So it's very interesting when people meet me for the first time and I'm like, yeah, I own this brand. And they're like, so what do you own? I'm like, it's called Kiffkak. And they're like, no, because I think they expect like a boot, that kind of Joburg boot vibe.
I can understand that because of the way you do your copy in your like Instagram posts.
Yeah.
Very boot-esque, I have to say.
Exactly, yeah.
You must have gone to a school of hard knocks to refine that.
I'm from the East Rand, so that counts as the hard knocks.
Yeah, it comes with the territory, I guess. Yeah.
I went to this Bringers girl child to work day when I was in high school. Okay. And they kind of said that if you
brought a child to work in high
I was
school.
The child that was brought
you okay?
to work.
Just trying to get us understanding.
Yeah. And it was like at a marketing agency, and they said if you are going to start a brand, you need to give that brand a personality, and you have to talk like that person. You have to advertise like that person. And I guess the boot just. Maybe I have it in a boot. It just felt natural and came out in the brand. So
it's very evident.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're more boot than I am at this
Deep
point.
Inside.
Deep inside. This is who I really am.
Yeah.
Well, I think. I mean, whoever gave you that advice was completely right. And I think if you go on the journey through Kiffkak's social media or digital, we call it the digital handshake. That journey, it's constant throughout.
Yeah.
And what I really enjoyed when doing like my research for this conversation today is how you've leveraged the different platforms in different ways, but you know that you're on a Kiffkak page regardless.
Yeah.
Same, but different, because the way that you do is Instagram, obviously, I think that drives a lot of your online sales.
Big time, yeah.
Where TikTok, you're using meme marketing quite well.
Yeah.
And there's this thing called Fastvertising where you're jumping onto trends and then speaking about them in your tonality of the boot that is Kiffkak.
Yeah.
And it's just 100% completely relatable to us as South Africans.
Well, TikTok was like a big experimental thing for me because I'm at this like precipice, I would say. Like I'm right on the edge of, do I tell people who's behind the brand or do I keep Kiffkak as its own identity? So TikTok has been like a way for me to experiment with me being in videos.
Introduce
to see
yourself.
To kind of it's like a soft launch, like letting people know who's behind the brand, that it's not this boot. But so that's something that I've been playing with recently about trying to introduce the person behind the brand. But yeah, honestly, like TikTok wise, if you just throw in like a few South African jokes and stuff, you're literally set. Like slang is such a good key to like bringing people together, not only just getting views. It's like such an easy tool to use. So.
I mean, that's a really cool insight for anyone that's wanting to start a South African business like you have yourself. So, I mean, would that be one piece of advice you would give to someone that's starting to, start a proudly South African brand? I know we need copyright to use proudly South African these days. So what other advice would you give them?
Well, that's the thing, like, look, putting slang on t-shirts is not a difficult thing to do. Anyone can start a brand tomorrow and put slang on t-shirts, but it's the authenticity that you do that with. And I also think like the reason I've been so cautious to let people know who's behind the brand is because there are certain catchphrases that I use that are in like Zulu, for example. And there's always this debate where you're towing the line between appropriation and appreciation.
Yeah.
So I think if you're going to start a brand that's centered around being proudly South African, you have to make sure that you're well informed about the community that you're representing. And if I'm not Zulu, I need to ask somebody that's in that culture, is what I'm saying politically correct? Does it make sense to you? How do you feel about it? It's always, you have to check in with your community if you're going to have a brand here. So
yeah, I think that's pretty sound advice. It's like you need to always have that, what would the term be, like a gauge.
100%.
Is this going to be controversial? Is this
Yeah.
going to be funny? Is this not funny anymore?
Exactly. There's a lot of the times when I'm like at events and things, people will come and say, oh, do you know what, you should put on a t-shirt? And it's just like, there's certain slang words that, great, it's all funny and whatever, but we're trying to appeal to a mass market, and you need to be cognizant of, like, already I have a rainbow t-shirt that says Yana Fork.
Yeah.
That is my best seller. I went and delivered t-shirts to the lady that does my embroidery the other day, and I said to her, how many of these rainbows have we done? And she was like, honestly, we're like hitting the 2,000 mark. Like, I've done so many rainbow
Incredible.
tees. But the thing is, Yana Fork is already, for a lot of people, past the edge.
For just those English viewers, listeners, what does that translate to?
So Yana Fork is like an exclamation, like, oh, fuck.
Just what did you say out loud to me?
Honestly, I get this question all the time. And then it's over a rainbow design. So it's just kind of that juxtaposition of like having like, oh, fuck above a rainbow. But I mean, it's also kind of like South Africa tied up in a simple design because we have load shedding and all of that stuff, but we're still the damn Rainbow Nation.
Yeah.
Even though it's, oh, fuck, we're still like, love being here, man. What a
It's
vibe.
true. It's this juxtaposition between, is this going to work out, and how amazing is this place?
Literally, yeah, all the time.
We're always teetering between both.
Right.
Yeah, binary almost.
Yeah.
It's on, technically it's on and it's off majority of the time in more ways than one. But that's amazing to have 2,000 teas sold, and I'm sure many, many more to come.
Yeah.
So would you say you have quite a long list, probably a longer list of phrases that you can't use, and much shorter list of the ones that you actually can use?
So actually there's like two things that have been pitched to me that I'm like, I don't really want to touch that market space.
Okay.
But otherwise, I'm actually, the thing about Kiffkak is it's not shy to, it is what it is. I tell people a lot, like, price point wise, we have products between 20 Rand and 400 bucks. Kiffkak is not Gucci. That's what I tell people. The same way as like the phrases that we use, we're not Gucci, guys. Like, we're not afraid to put something on a t-shirt and see how it goes. So there are like certain things that I stay away from, but I would say majority of the things I'm like, might as well have a crack at it.
Test it, see what happens, right? Yeah, I think that's also the beauty of the fearlessness in owning something of your own, is that you can direct it and choose and curate and pull it in any direction that you want, because you yourself are also experimenting continuously.
Exactly. There's been like kind of grungy thing that I've been exploring lately, because it's been very like illustrative and pretty, and now I'm thinking about going into a more like darker grungy thing. And what's great is like, I don't need to ask someone permission to make a grungy t-shirt. I just make it and see how it sells. It's like asking the customer for permission in a weird way. But you really are not tied to anything specific. You can literally do whatever you want, which is really cool.
Well, I think the best thing about your, I guess, industry that you're selling to is that it's quite seasonal, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're going now into winter, so now you're going to have a new batch of, clothing, maybe jackets or whatever, the beanies.
Yeah.
So now you get to experiment with a new, I guess, identity for that period, and then you can say, okay, cool, the grunge really wasn't as receptive as I thought it would be. Let's not do that again. Or maybe try it again, but in a swimsuit range.
100%, yeah. And I'm also kind of doing a lot of collaborations recently.
Yes, I saw that actually.
Yeah, so the nice thing is that Kiffkak has like the set, like the rainbow, I will honestly put on any product I can get my hands on because I know that it will sell. But in terms of like experimenting like with the more grungy look of things, I've collaborated with South Africa, the meme page.
Yeah.
So we did a t-shirt together, and that was a nice chance for me to say, oh, let's see if my audience is going to like this, but also through another kind of avenue. So it looks like Kiffkak, but it doesn't look like Kiffkak, but it's adjacent, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're getting the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
And then how did that collaboration work? Did they reach out to you? Did you reach out to them? Or did someone in the comments be like, oh, this would be a great collab, and that just let the light bulb spark?
I literally sent them a DM, and I was like, guys, like,
Slid
I think we're
DMs,
missing
guys.
yeah, professionally with consent.
Professionally with consent.
Yeah. So I
Glad
was
you
like,
clarified.
yeah. So I was like, hey guys, like I don't know about you, but I think that this is like a brand match made in heaven. And Alistair, the guy that owns the brand, said, you won't even believe it, but I've been talking to my team for months about reaching out to you, so this is perfect.
Serendipity.
Yeah,
always
so
works,
it was literally, we wanted to work together. There was like a long period of us bouncing ideas off of each other, but for the most part I led the creative, because they've also never done a merch drop at all, and he's in America actually, the guy that owns the brand.
That's super interesting.
So he bought it from, I think it was like two young guys that started the meme page, and then they bought it from them. So it was like collaborative, but it was more them creative directing, which was also nice. Like having somebody to give you the tick is nice sometimes.
Also like Len can take off that thinking hat a little bit and give it to somebody else.
100%.
You know? Like spread the essence, because I mean obviously like you said, there's a clear distinction, but there's a clear distinction between the two brands with the South African Kak and Kiffkak. And then it's so nice to see that synergy between two people being like, okay, this can work in
100%.
different ways, right?
Yeah. But I also do collabs with people, like there's this one of my friends has a candle business. So we made chappy scented candles, and right now we're working on a milk tart candle.
Excellent.
So it's called Scents of South Africa, and we're just adding to the range, like, and then we ask people like, what scent would you like in a candle? Someone said Bryflace, and I'm like, I don't know if we can do that.
Well, I heard someone was making a cologne of a Boerewors spritz.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We'll see how the women
Well,
react
hey,
to that.
I'm telling you, in some neck of the woods around here, that might just be what they want to smell, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Why wait for the Brown Friday when you can bring it all the whole week? I mean, with that said, I mean, collabing is a huge part, I think, of any creative's journey today.
Yeah.
I think collaboration is like a key term that's used from content creators through to businesses, because I think it's about leveraging each other's audiences to get as much of a return on investment. And I've seen that you've done work with, let me get it. You've collabed, or rather done work with Hollards, Cadbury, Danone, Park Acoustics, which I loved, and Engine.
Yeah.
Who is next that you would love to work with? Like if you could do a shout out to the brand right now, who would that person or brand be?
So I really want to work with Nando's.
Ooh, I could actually see that.
I just think that Kiffkak and Nando's speak the same language. They're like cousins from the same family, just selling different things. And I think Kiffkak would work so well with Nando's. So Nando's would be top of my list.
I think Nando's, if you're watching this, you need to get in touch with Courtney from Kiffkak.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is a match made in heaven. That is I can foresee that actually.
Yeah.
I think that's, if I had an orb, I think that's in your future, definitely. No, that's so cool. I think it, like you said, it lends itself directly to what you have created and what they've established too. I mean, as a creative, that's also a brand that I would love to work on.
Yeah.
Just because of like the strong hold that it has, and I use this word a lot that I've found on the podcast, but it forms part of our zeitgeist as South Africans.
Yeah.
Right. If there's an issue, a compelling story, Nando's jumps on it and turns it into this joke. And I think you've done that with fashion. Right, you've identified that formula, and now you've replicated it.
Yeah, I mean, Nando's does it super well because if you think South Africa, you think like even advertising. Those are like the classic adverts that we think about all the time.
100%.
And it's also just like literally playing off of like current affairs and things like that. So what Nando's is doing is not necessarily a difficult thing to achieve. And it's always so interesting to me that people aren't jumping on the South African train
It's the
more
agility
often.
to do it, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we can speak on it ourselves. We went viral when Charlize Theron made that statement.
Yes.
You know, there's like only 44 people that speak Afrikaans. And then literally after hearing that statement, one of the guys on our team was like, that would make a funny video. Then we were all in here recording it. And then we, you know, I don't know how many views, but we went viral on TikTok.
Yeah.
And I just think you're right. Like, I think it's more of a brand or business or an agency being able to fail fast by trying something, and it might not work, but if it does work, you strike oil, right?
100%. And I think also like advice that I would give to someone that has a brand, like don't be too hard on yourself, because like views doesn't equate success. Sometimes I'll post a TikTok, for example, it's so frustrating. You'll go viral. There was one that like had 200,000 views or something, and then the next one you get like 200, and then you're sitting there and like, what is it about me? Like, why does TikTok hate me? But it honestly, like, it's not personal, and it's okay, because often when you're reaching 200 people, there's also important people in that batch of 200 that are going to buy your products, or, you know, you never know.
Your minimum viable audience, right?
Exactly. There's often like when I'm at events and things, there'll be like slow days, and you're kind of sitting there and you're like, oh, I'd rather just like be at home right now. Like, I really just don't want to do this. And then somebody will walk in. Like, I had a super slow day at this event in Cape Town, and then the creative director of Ogilvy, one of the like bigger guys, walked into the Kiffkak space, and he was like chatting to me, and I was like, damn, like if I wasn't here I wouldn't have met this person.
You don't have this conversation.
So it's nice because the quieter times actually give space for more meaningful interactions and connections with people. Yeah,
that's awesome. Has anything occurred from that, or is that maybe under...
I just told him to remember the name. So hopefully he does.
Don't be kak, be lekker.
Yeah.
We've had our break. We've brought in the smoke effect. We've topped up our cups. So far this has been a great conversation. But I think what I find most fascinating about your journey into getting into all of this is how it began.
Yeah.
And you sent us through a timeline, the Kiffkak timeline. And in 2017, Kiffkak starts as a university project.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I did illustration and comm design. Comm design's kind of like just graphic design. And for illustration, they asked us to do an illustrated product range that brands our heritage. And I had a bit of an identity crisis, because as an English white South African, for Heritage Day, like, we just put on our Springbok rugby shirts, and then we're like,
it's very true.
Heritage. Yeah. We really just like, my mom doesn't even use spice in her food. So honestly, like,
wow, that is very white.
Yeah, we are see-through white. So I grew up in Crystal Park. My mom is like actually a teacher, so I went to her primary school, but I was the only white person in my class in primary school. So I used to like braid my hair for formal school events.
You got one in right now as well, I saw.
Bit of an homage, if you will. So I used to go to the white hairdresser and say, I'm going to need you to do corduroys for me. And she really sickled, but she didn't. And then, so we used to get like kota after school from like the little winkel on the side of the road, that kind of vibe. And then I moved to Benoni High for high school. I think that's where the butt inside of me was born.
Probably where it originated, yeah.
Yeah. And then Open Window, I was friends with mostly Afrikaans people. So I was like at this crossroads where I was like, cool, I don't have a heritage, but I have been influenced by a lot of other people's heritage growing up. So it was first called Courtney's Little Cookies,
Okay.
which is probably the worst copywriting I've ever done in
Yeah,
my
it's not
entire
up there,
life.
I'll be honest with you.
I don't think we'd be sitting here
No,
now.
we would not be.
Yeah, if it was
We'll be
called that.
laughing. Look at these failed brands here.
Yeah, literally. So by some grace, it was shortened to Kiffkak. And actually the illustrations, the rainbow and all of that stuff was from that original
Oh, wow.
project.
So that was the starting point.
So, Kiffkak is more of an amalgamation of all these cultures that I grew up with. But there's this term that I've learned since then called third culture.
Okay.
So third culture means that you grew up in a culture that's different to the one that your parents grew up in. My mom came to South Africa on a ship from England. My dad, we're still not sure where that side of the family really comes from. I try to ask, but they're just like, we've been...
That's a bit blurred, that family tree.
Yeah.
I'll tell you when you're older.
Yeah, basically. So a third culture kid is what I am. And I think Kiffkak represents a lot of third culture kids. And in South Africa, you have so many different cultures that a lot of the time people grow up in multiple different cultures. So I think Kiffkak is a really cool place that they can find relatability and a little bit of home, even though everybody's home is so different. Yeah.
Oh, that's super interesting. So you went through that process and you were like trying to figure out, okay, cool, this is my culture, this is my heritage. And the rainbow is part of it. The name gets shortened. You got your grade. I'm assuming it must have been quite good for it to be something worth pursuing afterwards. So now you get your grade and then you cum laude your class, right?
Yeah.
When was that seed planted of, okay, maybe this idea of Kiffkak or Courtney's cute little cookies.
Yeah, please,
thank
never
gosh.
again.
Thank gosh, that should be a swear word on the show.
Yeah.
So then what were the next points into how this started to evolve? Can you walk us through that?
So I must also throw in there that my dad owns a scrapyard in Springs that sells parts for cars. But there's a little room inside the scrapyard that's the graphics department.
Okay.
Graphics with an X at the end.
Okay, very cool.
So
very,
they make
2000s.
stickers. Yeah. Great branding runs in the family, clearly. So they make stickers for cars. And that's where the first Kiffkak stickers were made, was in this little corner in the scrapyard. And a lot of our stickers are still made inside the scrapyard.
Amazing.
So my friend Tana, who you're familiar with, I showed her the stickers in 2017 and she was like, you should sell these. And then I was like, oh no, it's just a silly project. And she was like, no, I'm going to buy a sticker from you. And she stuck it on the back of her laptop. And then the wheels started turning. I'm like, perhaps this is something that I could do. And she was the person that encouraged me to post my first Instagram and to make an Instagram for Kiffkak.
Yo, shout out to Tana,
Shout out to
wherever
Tana,
you are.
yeah.
What a legend.
Tana said after I make my first million, she'll get a Kiffkak tattoo. So we're holding her to that.
Okay, now it's official.
Yeah.
It's been stated here.
Yeah.
I don't even think she will mind.
Right.
She probably
Yeah.
did it just before.
Yeah, exactly. So in third year, we had to develop this identity for ourselves, this creative identity. And that's when Kiffkak developed even more and the product range grew more.
The inner butts really grew up.
Yeah, right from within. So my work experience, I worked for this place that shall not be named for 5 days. That was my first job. Because after 5 days, I was like, I made a mistake. I was panicking. And Spaza Studios in Pretoria, it's an illustration and design studio. They contacted me while I was working for that place and said, do you want to come and do an internship? So now I had to kind of have this gamble. Do I quit the job to go do an internship? But I felt the calling that Spaza was the place that I needed to be to grow my skill set.
That's amazing.
So I took the leap, quit my job, moved to Spaza for the
5-day
internship.
job. One
Honestly,
week, they
one of
just
my
got you all
favorite
set up.
jobs.
They had
Yeah.
okay, here's your email. This is the CRM system we use. This is where we
Yeah.
go on.
I got
Okay, cool.
the
Well, I'm
card.
out.
Yeah, the
Thank you.
access card was printed.
They got your face on a card.
And
wow.
it's the worst thing.
They
'cause
probably don't like Kiffkak at all.
but where is Kiffkak now?
Well,
So
there
there
you
we go. And one of the worst things is that it was in a shared workspace. So they didn't have a boardroom. So when I quit my job, we sat on bean bags in this bean bag room. And I had to hand in my
How'd you get out?
resignation. Yeah, it was just like
Can you
this
help me
awkward,
up?
like we're both like crawling on the floor after I quit the job. It's very weird. So I went and worked at Spaza, and while I was at Spaza doing the internship, Promise Group said, listen, we'd like you to come work for us. So I'm going to tell you guys about how much I was earning, because I think this is important for somebody that's straight out of varsity.
Cool. Yeah, please share.
So Promise Group was offering 14,500 a month. And for straight out of varsity, that's
huge.
Really good.
It's a lot.
Spaza was offering 7,000 a month. The internship was paid. That was 5,000 a month. It was going to be 7 for a salary. So now you're sitting at this crossroads, right? Where you're like, I'm working really well at Spaza and I'm learning as much as possible, but that money sounds really, really good. And this is something that I think a lot of creatives, like, you have to take that gamble. Yeah. So I was like, okay, am I going to sit in Spaza and learn as much as possible, or do I want to be a small cog in a big machine at a big agency for more money? So I made the leap to stay at Spaza.
Great. I love that.
And I think like that would also be my encouragement to young creatives. If you feel like you are planted somewhere that you are going to learn as much as possible in your first year of work, the money will come. Rather, like, that knowledge is really invaluable.
Yeah.
And at Spaza, I sat next to the owner of Plankton Moby. So Tian built that business, and he sells tickets for big events all around South Africa. So I was placed in a specific position where I was learning every day from Brent and Nathan, who own Spaza, but also from Tian, who had built a massive business.
Yeah.
So
huge.
Why would you take the gamble?
You can't say, I mean, that extra 7,000 rand a month, which also gets taxed, is, you can't replace that. Like, it's almost priceless. What you really can't quantify
100%
is sitting in those meetings, hearing people of that experience discuss things like, you know, what are we going to do to diversify? How are we pivoting? What's our scale process?
Exactly.
You know?
It's hands-on experience.
I love that you said that, though, because I was really rooting for that as the answer, not being, and then I took the money.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that's so true to how we've also set up DarkMatter here. Is we're also like a young, small to medium. We are an agency that is growing in size. We're expanding. We're getting new people. We're getting more office space. But I think it's true to that core of, you learn here. So you are put into a place in which you have the opportunity to learn across different business units, i.e. from the social media team to the production team to the design team.
Exactly.
Even to the website team, the sales team. Everyone is leaning on and picking up little nuggets and understanding how it works. Because there's, as much as there is a hierarchy, it's also very flat. And I think that is the opportunity for growth that these bigger companies, not just agencies, but bigger companies don't give.
Yeah, because you are you are just a number at the end of the day. So also, like, mental health wise, for example, that's something you need to think, like, do I just want to be, like I said, a little cog in a really big machine? Or do I want to feel like I'm actually contributing to something important?
Yeah.
So, for example, like the work for Hollard and for Cadbury and things like that was done through Spaza Studios, which is like invaluable brands to have on your CV.
It's massive.
And I'm still in touch with all of them. I still go to the office, and that's also something that I would encourage people, like, don't burn a bridge. Even though I don't work there anymore, I'm still in contact with the people. And that's like super important to keep that community kind of feeding into you wherever you come from.
With anything, and you touched on it earlier, is how you lean on your community to check if something's right or if this will work. And I mean, those individuals, I don't know them personally, but you can go to them with a problem, or you can go to them, I'm thinking about this. Is this right for where I am right now?
Exactly.
And because of their experience, because of their knowledge, they're obviously going to guide you in the right direction.
Yeah.
I think owning relationships, it's obviously a two-way street because there's a give and a take, right? But I completely concur in that. Like, you need to maintain that, because at the end of the day, that's all you will have, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's this amazing book that I read when I was younger. My dad bought it for me. The last safe investment is yourself. And what that book's premise is about is, you need to invest in yourself, because that investment gets spread to other people. Yeah. So if you're a good person, if you're an honest person, if you're if you're a diligent person, if you can be relied on and reliable, then that speaks volumes for who you are, because then it comes full circle to you. Because now, like, for example, Tana, who I know is obviously a very good friend of yours, there might come a time when you might have to lean on her, and you know that you will be able to rely on her because of who she is and what she's built.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
I recently worked with a life coach through this program that I did with Constitution Hill. And the life coach had us write down like the different pillars of our life. And she made us write down what we look for in a community, 5 different points. And part of that I said kindness, compassion. And I was like, it's so important also to feed what you are looking for from a community into yourself too. Because I realized at that point in time, you're so deep in the business, and I'm grinding and I'm making these products and I'm doing the things, and I'm feeding kindness and compassion to my community and expecting them to give that back to me. But often you don't give that to yourself. And that was like a real pivot for me, that I was like, I need to take time, even though I'm building a business, to be kind and compassionate
100%.
towards myself too.
Yeah.
So I think it's also like remembering that if you have a community, you're also part of that community. So you need to treat yourself accordingly.
And also, like you said, it holds you accountable at the end of the day. Because now if you're not preaching those values that you're trying to get your community to understand, then your brand loses its authenticity. Because then people see right through that.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen something similar, and I can bring it back to my own standpoint with DarkMatter, where, you know, we lived values, but we never had them, right? Like we knew what they were, like almost like in a meta way, but we never like wrote it down and put like work towards it. And it was halfway through last year where we ironed out what those were, and that's RECT, where it's respect, resilience, excellence, commitment, and transparency. And now having that understood by the team and putting it on the wall, like every day you can see that, and you can like keep coming back to, okay, cool, was I respectful in this regard? Was I respectful to the client? Was I resilient with the work that was given through to us? Did we strive to excellence? And I think it's like that checklist that you can work towards every day. And then at the end of it, you can say, okay, cool, I did live the values that I worked towards, or I didn't. Where's the room for improvement? Where do I change?
And I must say, like, Tana phoned me the other day when you guys were having like a games night.
Yeah.
And I
Shout
said
out
to
to
her,
Chris. You will be missed.
Yeah, farewell. But I was like, I don't know if you realize how special the place is that you work at, because not many people will spend their free time in the evening at the office playing board games with the team, because most teams don't even get along that well that they want to spend an extra minute together. So you guys are definitely doing something. You're getting wrecked, if you will.
We are getting wrecked. Yes, we are getting wrecked. And a lot of people did that Friday night. But I think that's a bigger conversation, and I think you're maybe getting towards that point. Like, we know a big driver for a reason's purpose to be at a business is obviously the salary, the experience you're going to get, the brands you work on. But I think a bigger pull today is the culture, the environment that you're surrounded by. Because, I mean, it's no joke. You obviously spend so much time with the people you work with, they become your second family. And I know DarkMatter, specifically Shoal, has worked extremely hard to cultivate an environment in which people feel like they can be heard, listened to, and almost like judge-free, right? You know, obviously it's you right now that is Kiffkak. What is your vision for the future of this business? And if so, what is the culture that you would bring into your team? Say you had 20 people working at the business. What do you envision for it?
So I'll give you a rundown of the business plan loosely. So I want there to be 3 distinct sections of the store. So it's Kiffkak Cares, Kiffkak Collaborations, and the Kiffkak product range. I will mostly be designing the Kiffkak product range just because I feel like I've got a good grasp on it now, and I'll keep doing that. Kiffkak Collaborations, like we've mentioned, is Kiffkak working with other brands and other small creators. And then I also think Kiffkak Collaborations, one thing I want to touch on is that when you graduate with a creative degree, it is very difficult to get your name out there. I would say in a large sense, there's this culture of gatekeeping that I've noticed, that there's like these select few creatives that get kind of picked and they're used for all of the campaigns. You know, it's kind of like an influencer at the same time as a creator. That's kind of where we're going. So in Kiffkak, I want to give young creators a chance to get their names out there through the brand. So that's what the collaborations are going to do.
Give them a platform.
Exactly. And then Kiffkak Cares, I have a few Kiffkak Cares products. The one that we have now is the lacquer lunch boxes.
Yes, and it goes back to the ladles of love.
Exactly. So I think it was 4,667 meals.
4,667.
Yeah. That we donated to kids in Cape Town through the sale of those lunch boxes. So that's super important to me, is to have products that give back to the community. And all of those sections are going to be in stores. So that's like the big dream, is to have Kiffkak stores. So look, it's daunting because I'm also like, this is my little dream that I had. And even now, like we were saying earlier to each other, I look back and I'm like, oh, I did the damn thing. Like, how did that happen? When did that happen?
It's a little bit of a blur.
Exactly. So I think it's quite daunting as a young business owner to now involve other people in that dream. So I am at the point where I'm ready to start letting other people work for me, but it's also just like a really scary step to take. And it also has to be, which I'm sure you guys know, like it has to be someone that understands the vision.
Yeah, they have to live and breathe your brand.
Yeah.
But I think what's important to note is that you will never find someone that is you. So you can't go looking for someone that has to reflect all of you.
Exactly.
Everything you do, because the beauty of having other people within your business is that they color in lines or spaces that you don't necessarily have.
100%.
And that's about finding, what am I missing and what do I need?
Yeah.
And that's how you should be looking for the people that you need to hire.
I have like a Google form that's on the link tree on my Instagram. So if anyone wants to like apply to work with Kiffkak, they can go fill out that form. And there's like very specific questions. Like one of the questions is, what makes you Kiff? And the other one is like, why do you want to work with Kiffkak? And that's super important to me, that like how somebody answers those questions will show if they're on that same wavelength that they can work with the brand. So I think like in terms of a company culture that I would cultivate, it honestly, like, don't be a doers, be lacquer comes to vibe. Like that would probably be our
As you walk in the door.
Yeah, we'll put that on the wall. So that's like super important to me, that somebody is passionate about South Africa and passionate about their community, like before the brand. Because if they get those two things, they're going to understand the brand and do well working for us.
Yeah, they'll seamlessly slot into your vision.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And then fill in the spaces that you haven't yet thought about
100%.
or don't yet harness.
Yeah. And that's also something, when Kiffkak first started, when I was still working at Spaza, and I was like, cool, I'm going to print my first batch of t-shirts. I printed probably 50 t-shirts. That was my first batch. And for me, that was already like, oh, that's a lot of money. So that was like a test. I bought the cheapest, nastiest t-shirts that I could find. I did the worst. I would never print like this ever now.
Lessons,
but I did
school
that
fees.
that plasticky heat press that like if you iron on it,
it's gone.
It's ruined. So I started with those 50 t-shirts with really cheap prints, really cheap t-shirts. And then those 50 sold. And because I was working on a certain profit markup, then I could make 100. Then the 100 sold, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to make 200 t-shirts. And I mean, now I'm ordering like solidly 250 restock a month, which is adding to, I've probably got, I don't even know how many t-shirts. Just a shout out to my parents too, because like Kiffkak is literally run out of my dining room at home. So there's like crates of t-shirts everywhere. It's like
next to the beer crates.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, thank you so much. I just provide the vibes at home and then they give me the space. But that's also the thing, like start small. And now I have t-shirts that are made in South Africa, and the cotton is grown in Lesotho, so it's like literally homegrown stuff, which is super important to me.
You're embodying your brand's vision and your values again.
But it's okay to like do the baby steps where you're having like really cheap, shitty t-shirts and then growing.
Of course. And I think maybe you owe it to those first 50 customers.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
A better quality t-shirt if they can find you one day.
I remember I sold one to this guy, and then he like contacted me, and then he was like, oh, you know, it's like a bit of a weird print. And when
it's a bit of a cuck print.
Yeah,
This ain't Kiff.
Yeah, I was like, well, what do you expect? But he was like, yeah, the print like looks a bit weird after I tumble dry. And I was just like, ugh, men don't know how to wash things. I was like, he just doesn't know what he's doing.
I think that might even be like a saying on a shirt.
Yeah.
Cool, we're back. Another break, more smoke.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I think this has been fantastic conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you again so much for joining us. I don't know why I'm saying this now. It feels like I'm ending it. Still got a few more questions for you on the podcast. How do you think your online presence has got you to this point?
So Instagram, firstly, has been super, super important for the brand. I think going back to the community, it's not just about you and your community. It's also about the Kiffkak community that I'm building.
Yeah.
Which, look, was it my intention to own a brand and to have this many people buy t-shirts and celebrate South African culture? Not really. It was just a project at Varsity, and it grew into this kind of beast that it is. But something that strikes me every single time that I do an event, even the people that don't purchase Kiffkak, there are tunnies like that get super offended. Let's just start there. Like, people get upset.
Yeah.
But for every one person that gets upset, there's 10 other people that are hosing themselves when they walk past the store. And I think, like, we'll get back to the online presence, but just in general, how happy the brand makes people has been super surprising to me. But it's just so nice to witness, like, in a culture and a time in South Africa where, like, we really could be upset all the time, but Kiffkak makes so many people so happy. And I think, like, the online community that I'm cultivating, you can tell that those people are happy about the brand too. Like, there's never been somebody that slid into Kiffkak's DMs and was being like a real Karen about something. Like, even if something is like not up to scratch with their product and they want to swap it, they're so nice about it. So digital is like super, super important, because that's like a footprint that you're laying down too. And I think, like, it's interesting to me how you said that my TikTok is different to my Instagram. I think it was an intentional thing, but you giving me more perspective on that as well. So I just think it's like creating a digital community is like super important.
Yeah, building out that digital presence. And would that be advice for someone who's wanting to start a business now, in your personal opinion? Would you say create the demand online first before you even go to like build out the actual product?
Look, it's debatable, because if you're selling products, you need to start driving those digitally before. Kiffkak is an identity, but Kiffkak is also the Unifork rainbow. It's the How's It Butch shirt. It's the sticker book. You can't really have, like, a brand is not a logo. That's something I've noticed a lot, that people just kind of have a logo, and then I'm like, it's more than just like a word mark.
There's a story.
There has to be a story behind it. And especially in South Africa, people want to connect with that story, because if they're spending their purchasing power on something, they want to feel really attached to what they're spending their money on, especially if it's jokes. Like, if I'm trying to convince someone to buy a Unifork t-shirt, they have to feel connected to the brand. Otherwise, they're not going to buy that thing.
100%. And then do you think that makes you authentic, is your identity, your ability to make jokes, to make things lighthearted?
Yeah, I think so. I think this is why I always like refer to Kiffkak not being Gucci. Like, we're not trying to be super fancy. We're not trying to, like, you know, sell you a Burberry bag. We are like, we have a fanny pack that's literally a chicken feet print, you know. The thing is, like, we aren't trying to sell you things that are super fancy, but we also, like, we're not trying to be that fancy brand. It's very evident on our Instagram that, like, you know, it is what it is kind of thing. I don't think it's unique to put slang on a t-shirt. I think that you could start a t-shirt brand tomorrow with slang, but I think it's about I use the word vernacular.
Yes.
So what I do is I use typographical references from spaza shops, for example. So you're looking at the letters that are formed in those hand-painted signs and things like that. So you're pulling references from everywhere.
Style, yeah.
Exactly. So that's making it more unique. And that's, I think, where the authenticity comes from.
Yeah.
Because we're not just typing out, how's it, in a sans serif font and putting it on a t-shirt. I'm going and I'm looking at the vernacular of the design in South Africa and applying that to the products.
And that's why I guess your brand will always evolve, right?
Exactly.
Because the community or the zeitgeist that is South Africa will continue to evolve and slightly change. And then that gives you a new variation of the same thing.
Exactly.
I wanted to ask, and I think you embody the brand so much that Kiffkak is you. But do you ever find that there needs to be a separation between the two?
Yeah. You know, often when I do meetings and stuff, I'll say we. And even when I talk to my parents, I'm like, we're doing a new shirt. And then they're like, who? You in what army? Who? And I'm like, I view it as Courtney and Kiffkak. Kiffkak is a thing on its own, and Courtney is working with Kiffkak. And I think it's also like that, being a business owner. Like I was thinking about, I did a pitch this week where they needed the hierarchy of the business. And I was trying to explain to them, I was like trying to explain like, well, there is no hierarchy because I am the hierarchy. Then they were like, no, but you need a slide in your presentation. So I did a slide where it said Courtney is CEO, and then it said accountant, marketing, and I just put my name for everything.
Yeah.
And then I said employee of every month, Courtney. And then at the bottom it said teamwork makes the dream work. And I think like often it will be like meet the team, and then it's like you, and then it's you with like a fake mustache on. But yeah, I think
secretary turned CEO.
Yeah, literally, you're doing everything. So it's important to have that separation for me, that Kiffkak is a person by itself and Courtney is a person by herself. If you meet Courtney on a normal weekday where I'm just like talking to a supplier or whatever, sure, I use slang in my way of talking, but I mean, when I was in the office just now, people were like, you're Kiffkak, you know? And I think I prefer it that way, because when I go to a market, for example, and I'm selling for Kiffkak, it's not Courtney. It's like this alter ego that I'm automatically, how's it guys, how are you? But then I also go home and I'm like, oh, I'm so irritating.
You're
I'm
probably
like
exhausted
so
as well.
Yeah. So it's definitely like, if you want to start a business that has an identity like Kiffkak, I think it's good to have that separation, except if you're an influencer and you're starting a business, because that's a different thing.
Well, that you should inherently be that person throughout.
Yeah.
And that's what leads to an influencer that has great success, because they are inherently true to themselves.
Exactly.
Versus the ones that get quickly like rooted out that this is just a facade, an act.
Right. So I think, it goes back to authenticity at the end of the day. And also when you're at an event, you don't have an hour to play the podcast to explain to people where Kiffkak comes from. So it's quite difficult. But yeah, authenticity, that's what it comes down to. And that's also why I'm looking to do the pivot to let more people into the back end. Because I also think I've been watching a lot of feminist stuff lately, and I'm like, I take it for granted that I'm actually a woman that's in a male-dominated industry that's doing this thing. So I think it would be inspiring to other ladies to like show them like, guys, you can do this thing.
Show them the ropes.
Yeah.
I think that's what we all seek, is seeing someone who is like us, be it gender, be it skin color or race, be it from a ethnicity or a sexual identity, but seeing someone that we can relate to or resonate with or completely understand in an empathetic way, seeing them do something, then that's where inspiration comes from.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
There's a big thing about it, and I think for all the blonde 24-year-old girls out there in South Africa, from Crystal Park to Benoni, they'll be inspired to know that they can do it too. Yeah,
exactly. I think it's super important. I mean, if you think about the brands that like I buy into, you buy into, you're just describing one that you are inspired by the story behind the brand. So I think, yeah, it's definitely a pivot that I'm going to make relatively soon to try and get people to know what's happening behind the scenes and who's doing it.
It's so important. I mean, and you said earlier when you first went to your job, the 5-day, was it your 5-day job?
The 5-day job.
You got to have a brand with a personality and a story, right?
Yeah.
We are coming to a close. I don't know how much time we have left, but I want to ask you this question and a few more.
Cool.
We're on the Blood, Sweat and Ideas podcast.
Mm-hmm.
When you hear that, Blood, Sweat and Ideas, what does that mean to you? Like what was triggered when you heard it?
So often before an event, I will be sewing labels into t-shirts and stabbing myself with said needles accidentally because I'm really actually cuck at sewing. So just like honestly,
it's even more inspirational.
Yeah,
I don't know anything about
blood,
clothing.
Literal blood.
Yeah.
So honestly, like if you have a dream, when I was going to quit my job at Spaza, it was a real difficult hurdle for me to take, because do you go and run this business that you don't know if it's going to work, or do you stay in that comfort zone? And my gran said to me, if you don't end up following your dreams, you'll end up working for somebody who is. And that has stuck with me since I was like battling with quitting my job. And I think that's what Blood, Sweat and Tears is like, if you have a dream,
Ideas.
Ideas. I think that's what Blood, Sweat and Ideas is that if you have a dream, you need to be relentless in pursuing that, if it means sewing labels when the load shedding is finished at midnight because you have an event the next day. If that means like driving across Gauteng to go and deliver a t-shirt to someone because they're immigrating tomorrow, I will do anything to get the brand out there. And you need to be literally relentless in what you're doing, because if that's your passion, you need to put it all in.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I think it's those hard times which, like you said, a lot of this has become a blur. Like, was that me that did that? Was that me that I, 30 under 30? Was that me that was at the Lurries? Was that me winning all these awards? When you get to a certain point in the future, those moments, I'm sure you'll probably remember fondly as to like, I can't believe I used to do that, but now look at the success that I've achieved. We always end the show with asking a question from you for the next guest.
Cool.
So, what would you like to ask the next guest? We don't know who that is. But what would you like to find out from them?
So I want to know from them, what advice would you give yourself 5 years ago? If you 5 years ago could see where you are now, what would you tell yourself? That would be my thing.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. I've absolutely loved this conversation with you, Courtney.
Same here.
Courtney Kiffkak. I think you guys are...
Courtney from Kiffkak on Instagram.
What?
From the last guest.
Yeah, I did. It's what makes you authentic.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. Thank you, though. This is a team effort, as you can see. Like, we've got... What I always love about this conversation is... setting this up is that we've got people all around us working, we've got people typing, checking the footage, checking the light, checking the sound, but we always continue to have like a very engaging and honest and really fucking cool conversation.
Exactly.
Right? So void of all of this, like it's about hearing your story and how that story will inspire other South African students who are currently in school, who are getting a similar project. That project might be more than just a grade. It could be the start of your career, start of your brand, of yourself. So thank you so much, Courtney. I mean, I've learned a hell of a lot. I've thoroughly enjoyed going through your digital profiles. Yes, the Instagram is very much to a T what I thought it would be, i.e., but the TikTok was hilarious.
Yeah, thanks.
I have to say, I think if Kiffkak ever does unfortunately fail, you've got a job as a comedian, a digital comedian.
I always say that when I'm at like events and stuff, I'm like, if all else fails, I'll just go be a comedian, honestly.
There you go. So look, we all have our backup plans, even the successful entrepreneur like you do.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks so much for sharing your story, your views, your opinions, your journey with us on the Blood, Sweat and Ideas podcast.
Thank you for having me. This has been really fun.
Yeah, we'll have you when we get to 1 million rand and Tana gets a tattoo
we'll
live.
Do it live.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly what we're going to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks so much. Excited to see where you go.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Keep you updated.
Please, yeah. We'll keep tabs on you.